about if one of our ancestors was possibly abusive, maybe even dangerous?
Yes.
You wouldn't necessarily ask them to come through, but what if they do come through?
I'll give you a perfect example of that, doing a reading for a woman where several loved ones came in, and then all of a sudden I felt this male presence, and I said, oh, there's a gentleman just showed up. He's showing me shackles as if he was arrested or had handcuffs, and he's showing me a Raggedy Ann doll, and he's beating it like this. And as I was trying to discern who he was to her, she stiffened and she said, make him go away. It was shocking. And I said, you need to go away. And all of a sudden I said, oh my goodness, this doll is symbolic of you. This man beat you. It's a former husband. She said, I don't want to talk to him. Make him go away. This is the only time that had happened. And this man was accompanied by two higher beings, like guides. And I tuned in and I said, she wants you to leave. And he hung his head down, my symbol for an apology. I told my client, he's only come because he needs to apologize to you. And she said, I don't want to hear it. Make him leave. And I turned to him and I said, your message has been delivered. And that's all we can ever do, is deliver the apology. And then these guides escorted him away. Usually I don't feel beings who have really done truly horrible things, but it was so interesting to me that he was being helped by loving beings. He came to make amends. And now that's her journey to find the forgiveness. It doesn't always happen. But when we realize that by understanding that hurt people, we see that forgiveness really does end that legacy.
If she or somebody like her does not accept the apology, do you believe that there's still a ripple effect in her energy field, her life, her thought process that will still create change? Or is it really up to her to allow it?
Well, the fact that he asked for an apology does help, but the fact that she couldn't offer it, there's no judgment of her, but that's an energetic block. So she's not allowing her light to shine as brightly as it could. That could possibly create a karmic issue that she might have to deal with in the future. So that's why we're here, to experience life in all of its facets. Doesn't mean it's easy, but when we can come into alignment with our true nature, which is love, things just flow better. So I would bet you that until she did find that forgiveness, she had a lot more struggle in her life. The moment we realize who we really are, expressions of love, of the light, then we start to see things flowing. We realize that's what it's all about.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Now, you mentioned earlier that once you cross the veil, you still got work to do. So, I mean, I know a lot of people think that as soon as you die, you become an angel and you're all wise and all knowing and all loving and you're just this marvelous being. But that's not necessarily the case. And I know time is rather meaningless when you're on the other side, but let's just use time as a shortcut word. How much time does it take for somebody to work through their stuff on the other side before they can actually come through as a well ancestor and offer healing?
It's absolutely individual as we are as interconnected lights. So I will see a sign from those across the veil. When they go like this, that means my eyes have been opened. I realize it's all about shining our light. I'm really working on myself. They may show me they were very critical with their word, that they were abusive. See how I get signals like charades. And that way their loved one recognizes them. So say, for example, you had a mother who was critical and abusive. If I came in and said, oh, your mother is just waiting to hug and kiss you across the veil, she loves you so much, you'd sit back and say, that's not my mother. So they show me the way we would recognize them. Then when I see this, that means I've seen the light. Literally, I'm working on myself. I can't wait to make amends, to hug you, to meet up with you again. And it's brilliant the way they show me that. Some people, I've had others that just show up and they hang back, and just making their presence known is a first step, but they're still working on themselves. Then I've had others who are immediately awake and alert and free across the veil, free of baggage, free of the human issues. And that's a beautiful thing. So the thing is, that's why I say, work on yourself now rather than later.
Right. Don't bring that stuff with you.
Yeah.
Now, what about people who have been adopted and don't know their birth family? My assumption is that you can pick up messages from their adoptive family ancestors as well as their physical family ancestors. Is that
Yeah,
accurate?
good. It's more challenging because I'll bring through evidence from them, but if they didn't know them, then they can't validate it. So we just have to trust, especially in the middle of a reading. If we get 3 or 4 family members, family ancestors, and then someone they don't know, and I'll say, this is your adoptive father, he's showing me this and that. Because everything else was evidential, that gives us some trust that this is true.
Okay. So let me ask you, if you don't mind, a personal story. What would be a really demonstrative story of what you've learned with regard to ancestral healing, specifically with your ancestors?
Oh, that's a beautiful one. Yeah, my guides just told me the direct answer to that. So if I could just quickly share 2 stories then. The first one about my own ancestors is when my dad came through on Christmas morning and made his presence so clear by showing me that my mom had just found her electric curlers the day before and that they didn't work. When my mom validated that, I said, well, guess what? Dad wants me to give you a reading. My own mom. It had never occurred to me. And when I did that reading on Christmas morning, her mother and father came through. Now, I knew my grandfather till he passed when I was 16, and I knew him as a jovial, wonderful grandfather. But he showed me such a different side of him that I never knew, the side my mother knew growing up. And my grandmother I never knew. She passed very young. She showed me just really a truly awful childhood from my mom. And I said, Mom, you didn't know any love at all growing up. Your parents never even said, I love you. And she said, oh no, as if that was just her life. But she never talked about it. And I was a little ashamed that I'd never asked. But it was so evidential for me. And I thought, Mom, how did you get to be so loving yourself? And then here's my dad. And it was, well, of course, their love for each other overcame the lack of love in both of their lives growing up. That to me was eye-opening and beautiful, very evidential for me, and healing too. It allowed me to forgive a lot of my mom's very human behaviors. Even though she was loving, we all have our faults. And so that was helpful. Right. The other point I wanted to make about making assumptions and not making assumptions was when a woman reached out to me and said, I need to have a reading and I need it now. I must have a reading. She was so insistent. I thought she needed healing badly. So I tuned in and the only person who came through was her uncle. And she said, well, that's exactly who I needed to hear from. And I'm thinking that somehow parents or children or spouses are more important in a reading than an uncle. That was a lesson for me, and not dismissing anyone, because she wanted that reading to help her father, still here, heal. He was getting older, he was depressed, and she knew he missed his brother, her uncle. His brother came through showing incredible evidence, including high school rings that they both had because they were twins that their mother had given them. Her father was transformed by that reading, by the awareness that his twin brother still cared about him from the other side, was still here at all. And that's what connecting with our loved ones does for us. Shows us that love never dies, that life is eternal. There's purpose in our lives, whether we're here or whether our soul's continuing across the veil. Every action we take is important, so let's align it with love.
All right, beautifully said. I also really love the way that when you got the message from your guide, you looked to the side and went, oh yeah, as if they are actually standing there, and there was an actual, and it's just your vibe shifted where I was actually feeling really tingly just watching you do that.
They had a better story than I did. Which is always the case. So we have to remember to ask. We'll always get higher answers than our own.
Right. So that, I think, was really a perfect demonstration for people who are learning this, what to watch out for. You didn't actually hear a voice that I could hear, but you obviously got information and it was palpable. So that's, I think, a really good way for people to know this is what to listen for. I get messages when I'm in the shower, when of course I can't write them down because you can't bring paper into the shower, but Yeah.
Yep. And it comes in many times sounding like our own thoughts, but for me it was, no, they quickly showed me that reading for my mom on Christmas Day. And I just know their vibe so much, and they always come in here, that I recognized it. So ask your guides. And many times our ancestors are our guides, not always. We all have guides who are with us from the moment we're born. But in some cases, when we had a real strong connection with someone, they become a guide also when they cross the veil. So ask your guides to make it evident when they're around, help you to know they're with you. It's a great journey, and it never ends, and it's always full of surprises and wondrous events. So set the intention of being more connected, and it'll happen.
Okay, great. I'm just one last question is coming to mind here. As far as people's say religious upbringings, do you find that people will get messages from beings that are sort of disguised isn't the right word, but I can't think of a better one, as somebody from their religious academies, like saints if they're Catholic, or that type of thing? Do you find that that happens?
Oh yes, and spirit is very creative and benevolent. We are the light, and so we simply set the intention that any beings that come to us are only of the highest light. And we're always protected. We just turn up the light and know that. And so we invite in whatever guidance is going to help our soul's journey. And so if we expect to speak with an archangel or with Jesus or with Buddha, that is possible. And in fact, in my classes, I share evidence of my own communications of that type. Having not been raised in any religion, that's been to me some of the most stunning evidence that I've received, showing me that we are all part of something so much greater than we may even be aware of. And when we set the skepticism aside and be open to whatever will help our soul's journey and those around us, spirit pulls out all the stops.
Thanks for listening. Check out Castle Gate, a novel based on my own ancestral healing journey, at lisabonis.com. In 1921, 4 men set off from Scotland to the United States. Will Garrock, his brother Pete, his son Willie, and his nephew Thomas, all coal miners. They left behind the miners' rows and the nationwide mining strike with its soup kitchens. Their destination was Castlegate, Utah, where they had kin to welcome them before sending for their wives and children. They prospered in America, working in one of the finest mines in Utah. Until that tragic day, March 8th, 1924. Disaster struck. 3 explosions trapping 171 men inside. Rescue crews worked tirelessly for days, but sadly, they could not save a soul. Women were widowed and children were orphaned, and some never recovered from their broken hearts. Castlegate is the true and tragic saga of a Scottish family whose dreams of finding their fortunes in the bountiful coal mines of Castlegate, Utah during the Prohibition era explode in one of the most devastating mine disasters in American history. Learn more at lisabonis.com.